Hi, I'm excited to introduce our talk today on designing for the future, the role of sustainable materials and carbon transparency in construction. So pleased to be joined today by Matt Redding, European Sustainability Lead at Gensler, and Samuel Boswell, LCA and embodied carbon expert at OneClick LCA. Thank you both for being here.
You.
Thanks, Asha.
Matt, now tell us a bit more about yourself and the work you do at Gensler.
So I'm Matt Redding. I'm the European Sustainability Lead at Gensler, and most of my job is to ensure sustainability is central to every design project across our European offices, and that includes kind of setting kind of sustainability goals, helping identify training for our talent and staff, and conducting kind of those quality controls for our leadership. And yeah, that's what I get up to.
Thank you. Now, Sam, tell us a bit more about your work at OneClick LCA.
Yes, so my name's Samuel Boswell. I'm a business developer at OneClick LCA for the UK and Irish region. And so a bit about OneClick is it's a global end-to-end sustainability platform for construction products and projects with a mission to power the makers of a zero carbon future. So OneClick's been operating for just over 20 years. We're now a team of about 200 strong, and it's designed to provide the capabilities for any construction professional to gain accreditation with over 80 different certifications and regulations around the world.
Thank you, Sam. Now let's dive right into the discussion with Matt and Sam.
Brilliant. Thanks, Asha. All right, Matt. So we've got a number of questions here. And I will start off with this one. So can you share how Gensler is working to make carbon assessments and LCAs accessible to everyone as part of your climate targets?
Thanks, Sam. So, Gensler is a global architecture practice, so probably best to frame that in that kind of light. You know, we're renowned for kind of pushing forward through kind of various industry-leading initiatives and human-centered design. We've got over 50 locations. We've got a staff of over 6,000, and certainly here in Europe, we've got 5 offices here, 2 in Germany, 1 in France, and 2 in the UK. And for us, the LCA data is complex. It's something where we have to kind of break these things down. Obviously, the European Union, Europe as a general, has so many different goals that need to be reviewed, and clients who have very specific ESG kind of targets, that it's very much starting with questions like, what is the impact that we're going to be having on this project? What is the carbon value of the kind of materials that we're going to be specifying within this project? And so our goal is to try and quantify and make that relatable to how a design works, not only for the client's needs, but also for the actual its location and what our effects are as designers in that process.
Okay, that's great. And so that kind of brings us nicely on to the next question, which is how do you involve the design teams in the LCA process? So how do you get your colleagues within Gensler to get stuck in and involved with the LCAs that you do?
So one of the first things that we try to, one of the things that we do is we have issued out, it's on our website, it's available for people to kind of look at, is our Gensler product sustainability standards. And this is something that's really enabled our team to look at a holistic way of specifying materials. And in that, we set carbon targets for particular materials. It's ever changing. We would love we'd love to get more, standard across the industries and various different products. And one of those things is, that's where we get our designers to start. It's difficult because obviously it's something that's new and it's not something that necessarily people have done before. But that initial breaking it down, giving us a checklist, allows our teams to really review simply those particular targets for each thing that they're looking to achieve, really.
Okay, and so how are those targets produced? Do you have benchmarks maybe from previous projects that you've done, or would you define this based off of building elements?
Well, I mean, the new release of the UK's net zero policy pilot has really helped with kind of understanding a lot more about kind of targets for buildings. That's a really great document that's now available. But yes, so we want to be able to get to the point where we're using essentially a baseline of the various different project area, construction areas which we've done, to be able to understand how and quantify where we are to where we want to be. It's challenging because data, what was good before or good yesterday isn't necessarily good today, but it's something that's really helped by the fact that this upcoming kind of regulations and the shift in industry to put this front and center has really helped us to kind of focus on how we are assessing and what are actually targets for each building.
Great. Okay, so the next question we have is, why is it important to start doing LCAs now? And what we mean by this is not necessarily doing the LCAs at the early stages. Of course, that is important and beneficial, but more in terms of the adoption of LCAs in projects that are being done now by not only Gensler, but anyone else involved.
So for me, it's challenging when we to quantify the impact, really, because when you start off at the very beginning, you're using quite generic information, and that is always the aim is to refine, and that's the great thing about doing an LCA is that you do get that much more specific information. You stop relying on the kind of generic data sets. We start getting very specific, and for us it's really important that that an LCA is done on, well, we want to be at the point where we're doing it on every single project, and that way we can rely on a portfolio of information that we can feel comfortable about, rather than just kind of one or two or kind of an industry standard. It, having our own experience, form what we see in how we design, that's going to be really relevant to upcoming projects, and that confidence that we can give to clients to say, this is how this will become the impact on this project.
Very good. Okay, so the next question again works well with this. So, what sort of initiatives does Gensler have to support these efforts? So, is there peer review? Does peer review play a role in your LCA process, and in terms of material selection, or how do you get involved? Everyone within Gensler to kind of take part in pushing this forward, so that you do reach a point where you can apply this on all projects that you're doing.
So, as I mentioned, we do have the Gensler Product Sustainability Standards. That's something where, again, that's very much a start for most of our staff here, so that they can get a bit of an understanding of what kind of targets from a material point of view they should be looking at. But something that we're really keen to, because it is happening across industry, it's something that we've been involved in as well, is this kind of peer review to ensure accuracy and accountability across the industry. And I think this is a really good process. I really want to encourage it more if I can. That we all need to face the fact that we're not all going to be able to do this perfectly. And it's only by working together can we actually make a difference, to make change. And for me, a peer review is not to catch someone out, it's a chance for people to learn something more. And so this is a real opportunity, I think, where we have this it's a fledgling, shall we say, industry of understanding this accountability on carbon, and I think there's a really good way of ensuring that that process is ever improving, is by this kind of collective on this kind of assessment, as well as kind of the accuracy that what we're putting out there for our clients as well as for the industry as a whole.
That's great. And I suppose you must have quite good engagement with everyone in Gensler with these sorts of peer reviews. Is it always just within the specific team that's working on that project, or do you sometimes maybe expand it to people outside of the team that's working on certain projects? And what kind of what sort of things have you found most interesting that are discussed?
I think what's really interesting is when I think getting as many people around the table is important. I think that really helps because you're just getting various different people's point of view from different lessons learned from different sectors of the construction industry, and that's vital. We can't expect everyone to know everything, and so it's really important, I think, that we have this collaborative approach to these types of assessments and reviews. And for me, that's we're all on a journey to learn these things, and I don't think that by offering and opening it up it should be seen as a negative. I think obviously there's contractual agreements that have to come, and there has to be certain ways in which we make that possible, but that process needs to be collaborative, and that's something that we really want to make sure there's an environment to allow that to happen, because the impact of a project can be huge, and so making sure there's more voices being heard and more people's expertise being brought to the table can only be the improvement and betterment of a project.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question is how does circularity of materials fit within your design process?
So this is something we really want to improve on. We want to encourage, especially because it's a huge challenge for the industry as a whole, to reuse existing materials. And I don't think there's necessarily a right answer. We want, it's something that we want to try and get in as early as possible in the beginning of the discussions at the design stage, so that it's kind of made part and essential, kind of a golden thread of the design is this kind of reuse or circular design. And then bringing a contractor who understands that, who can clearly see our values and where we're going with the project, that's really key, because it can very easily be lost in that transition from design to construction. And so we're very aware that the more that we start this conversation, we make it essential to the project, the purpose of the project, then we have something that will follow through to the end.
Okay, and so this sort of leads me on to think, is there a way in which you've approached your material library within Gensler in terms of how the architects within your company can interact with it and understand sustainability of those products that they're selecting, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So we've got a great material library. It's run by a colleague of mine, Blanca, and she's amazing. And actually, by having that central space, it has really allowed us to focus exactly what are we putting almost on the table, as it were. And we've recently had a review of all of those materials and put them through as I mentioned, the Argenza's product sustainability standards to see where do we have fallout, what is meeting what we've previously used necessarily, if it meets or not. And then attempting, well, we have now digitalized that as well, which means it's accessible to our European kind of offices. So it allows us further to make sure that throughout our designs we are not just thinking of our usual questions, which might be, specific client requirements for the aesthetics, for certain, regulatory requirements such as slip resistance or fire, but now also we're including that sustainability target, which means that as a whole we're constantly trying to improve. It's you never do it in one step. It's a series, and it's a journey. And so for me, the library has been an invaluable tool, and Blanca and her team has worked tirelessly to make sure that our talent has some really great materials that we can work with, and we can go forward and put them in front of clients confidently, knowing that they meet the requirements that we're looking to achieve.
Fantastic. Yeah. That's a good set of approaches that you've adopted. So I think this will be quite interesting for the viewers. We've got enough time for just one last question here. And so given the role of sustainable materials and carbon transparency, how do you envision the future of sustainable construction evolving? Quite a big question.
A big question, yeah. I see it being a requirement for, say, planning, or as part of the kind of regulatory requirement that you have to submit these kind of this LCA, this carbon analysis, that it's one of the key elements to moving forward. The reality is there could be eventually a tax on it as well, and so we already know there's green financing, but I think there could also be tax benefits as well. And I just see this only getting harder for us as an industry, and I think that by us tackling it now and going forward, we really have to start now. And that's probably my encouragement to anyone watching and listening is start now. And if you don't do everything, you don't do everything in one step. You do it as a journey. And so it's taking those initial steps and moving forward that you realize maybe we need to do a bit of course correction, because as an industry, it's now very much accepted that this is happening, and that we're only going to be getting a constant improvement as well as a constant challenge to improve.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I think that's a good point to round it off, and I will pass it back to Asha now to give us.
Thank you, Matt and Sam, for such an interesting discussion, and so happy to have you today, and thank you.
Thanks, Asha.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.